Coming up, how Alaska's Grow Local movement has taken root, not just in the ground, but at local restaurants.
It makes things taste like Alaska.
Also, a trip to a tiny community on the edge of the wilderness where there's no grocery store.
Thanks so much for coming.
But a garden with quite a story.
The soil is really good because people have been growing here for a long time.
From barley.
Barley flour has a little bit more of a nutty flavor.
To berries. Ahead, a taste of Alaska, what makes us hungry for more homegrown food.
Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief that the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to Frontiers. Today, we celebrate the labors of Alaskans in the farm-to-table movement. We start with a restaurant that gives you a discount if you show up on skis or horseback, or even with a dog team, which the owners say are easier on the environment than cars. But if you do decide to drive there, you can find the Flying Squirrel Bakery Cafe 3 miles outside of Talkeetna on mile 11 of the Talkeetna Spur. That's where KTVA's Lauren Maxwell found this deliciously Alaskan story.
The Flying Squirrel Bakery Cafe in Talkeetna is a bit off the beaten path. But once you've found it, you're likely to feel right at home.
I like to say we have something for everyone. You know, there's lots of vegetarian options, a good number of gluten-free options.
Anita Golden opened the Flying Squirrel in 2009.
These are cranberry white chip oatmeal cookies.
The food she serves isn't just healthy and delicious. To the extent possible, the items on her menu are grown nearby.
We'll put little stars, and then somewhere in the corner we'll say everything with a star is Alaska grown.
For Golden, eating local and using local ingredients is important.
We try really hard to infuse it wherever we can.
And so is supporting local businesses, like the sweetener in her homemade granola.
We add the Alaska birch syrup that comes from Talkeetna Birch Works.
To special salt that comes from Sitka.
Alder smoked sea salt on avocado toast. It's really delicious.
The bran and the oat bran.
But other ingredients are found even closer to home.
We juice the rhubarb and we freeze it.
Like this sparkling rhubarbade. Ooh, yes. This is really good. That crop comes from the family farm.
This is the older rhubarb patch here, but we had one row out in the field where I started growing vegetables.
Golden's husband Brian and her son Oliver,
he's just going to eat the rhubarb. He's famous for that.
Are the other part of this family-run business. Their Birch Creek Ranch produces a lot of produce, the fruit from berry bushes.
You can see they're about ready to blossom.
That will end up in pastries at the cafe, as well as vegetables.
She'll make pizza to die for, with cabbage on it.
Of every kind.
So you grow it, she'll use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Golden says she likes the challenge of cooking with local ingredients.
It makes things taste like Alaska, and I really enjoy doing that. On top of that, it's fun to be creative.
The results are on display in Talkeetna at the Flying Squirrel Cafe. Reporting for Frontiers, I'm Lauren Maxwell.
Coming up, we take you to the shores of Lake Clark to see a garden with roots that go back to an old homestead.
I think people really appreciate having a garden here.
How this garden helps people in Port Allsworth get by without a grocery store. How it helps to feed an entire community. It's a small plot of land, about 1/4 of an acre in Mountain View, but it's made a big difference to a group of immigrants.
Hey, good looking. What you got cooking?
When it's market day at the Fresh International Gardens, refugees who moved to Alaska from all over the world come to harvest and sell the food that they've grown. Almost everyone has a story to tell. Some left to escape wars, oppressive regimes, and other hardships. And now this garden is a chance to make a new start and help them feel more at home.
Especially when they don't know English, that it's difficult for them to, interact with others. But we're just trying to make them feel comfortable so that they can have their own businesses.
Most clients come from communities where they've spent most of their lives eating fresh produce. They're from countries where they walked up to a tree and picked a coconut off or a mango off a tree. And then they come here and they're shocked at how 95% of our, food is imported.
Last year, refugees in the program made about $13,000. They divided that amongst themselves based on the hours that they put in. The project is a partnership with the Anchorage Community Land Trust. Well, there are no roads in or out of Port Allsworth. It's on the eastern shore of Lake Clark, an important spawning ground for Bristol Bay's famous sockeye salmon run. And while you'll find plenty of fish, you won't find a single grocery store in Port Allsworth. But there is a garden that has grown right along with the community. Port Allsworth, the gateway to wilderness in the Lake Clark National Park. But this family farm was here well before the park, planted next to the runway, because this homestead would become the headquarters for Babe and Mary Allsworth's air taxi service and future lodge. Back then, the garden fed the family. Today, the community.
We have curly, romaine, and iceberg. It's super green. They're kind of huge.
And that's a good problem to have.
Okay. It's a good problem.
One of the benefits when the garden is the store outside your door. Also, you get your pick of the crop.
And back to, I need to weigh this one.
Okay.
Anna Burrows flies most of her groceries in from Anchorage.
For me, it's worth it to buy it here and buy it local. It tastes so much better.
Thanks to the high tunnels, there's more selection now.
They let you grow things that you could never grow otherwise. Tomatoes, cucumbers, we grow jalapenos and bell peppers, all the squash.
That doesn't mean it's easy.
Asparagus takes a lot of work and a lot of patience.
But the Allsworth farm has always been a work in progress. The garden also provides produce for neighboring communities, delivered by air taxi.
They ask more and more every year.
The potatoes are popular, and this root cellar keeps them fresh.
These were harvested towards the end of September, and they're still hard and nice.
There are some problems.
At nighttime, sometimes we've had moose come in, and they love all the cabbage family. They go for the head. It's really funny.
Moose nip is what they call the cabbage, which has to be covered up at night to keep the moose away and to make sure there's enough for the guests at the Allsworth Family Lodge, where every meal features potatoes from the garden and salads with vegetables that in a matter of hours went directly from farm to table. The farm is about 70 years old. It now feeds about 65 guests a week at the lodge with plenty of produce left over for the community to buy. And coming up, we head to Delta Junction to see how a family discovered that they could do more with their barley than just feed the cows. And we'll also hear from Jessica Stugelmeyer and Amy Pettit why they believe Alaska's appetite for homegrown food will only get bigger. In Alaska, one thing often leads to another and another, and that was the case for a family with a barley farm near Delta Junction who discovered they wanted to do more than just grow the grain. As KTVA's Heather Hinsey shows us, they're on a mission to get Alaskans to eat more barley.
I spend a lot of my time just biting grain this time of year.
The short growing season in Delta Junction is coming to a close.
You can't help yourself. You pull a grain off, you bite it, just to see how close you're getting.
Farmer Bryce Wrigley savors the last few days of summer.
I do, yeah. That's sound of success.
His family has been growing barley for animal feed for 30 years. Now they grow it for people, too. The Wrigleys started the Alaska Flour Company, which provides locally grown grain products.
We have a shorter season here, but we have more sunlight. And so grain crops are kind of a natural fit there. It's a challenge to grow wheat, which is why we chose barley.
Barley has become so successful, the Alaska Flour Company is expanding operations.
So we've got 2 mills running now. This is the mill that we were currently using.
Bryce's son Milo is the company's marketing manager. He says it's a dream come true to be able to do what he loves in a place he loves.
For me and my wife to come back here and to be able to help out with the family business, and for it to support a family, that's pretty amazing. And for it to happen here in the town that I grew up in, you know, just a little town in rural Alaska.
Barley flour has a little bit more of a nutty flavor. It's higher in fiber.
They've moved beyond basic barley flour, creating ready-made mixes and even barley couscous.
People are just resonating with the flavor, the story behind it. They love the fact that this is grown in Alaska in an area that, I mean, you saw it. This is pristine country.
It's pristine country that feeds the body and the soul.
It's very much a lifestyle. I tell people, you don't farm to make money. I don't know of anybody who farms to make money and makes money at it. There may be some. I think, in my case, I think a lot of people, you farm because you can't stand not to.
Another short but successful year on the farm where this homegrown grain continues to build up the barley business. For Frontiers, I'm Heather Hinsey.
And you can find a lot of the products from the Alaska Flour Company in local grocery stores. And joining us now to talk about the changing story of our food, Jessica Stugemeyer, editor of Edible Alaska, and Amy Pettit, who is director of the Alaska Farmland Trust and host of Ag Matters on the radio. And we'll talk about that more later. But when you see things like this Alaska Flour Company business, was that even possible, say, 10 years ago?
It might have been possible, but it certainly wasn't happening. You know, I worked at the Division of Agriculture back then, and we just did not have as many value-added agriculturally based businesses 10 years ago. Absolutely not.
So what do you think is responsible for this?
Well, I think that there's more interest, there's more demand, there's more farm kids coming back to the farm and wanting to be involved in the business, like Milo Wrigley. You know, how could he expand the business operation and what could he bring to the farm? And so they created Alaska Flour Company.
How about the farmers markets?
Absolutely, that's got a big role that plays, and Amy can probably speak to farmers who have come in and been a part of the farmers market and grown out of that, or people in the agriculture industry.
In 2005, there were only 13 farmers markets in the state. When I left the Division of Agriculture in 2015, there were over 40, and today there's over 50 farmers markets in the state, which just speaks to the growth and the demand. More people want access to Alaska-grown products, and the farmers are providing it.
But what about that transition from the farmers market to brick-and-mortar business? Do we see much of that?
We've seen a lot of it. You know, we were kind of making a list of the different companies that have graduated from the farmers markets. Here in Anchorage, there's Wild Scoops and there's Sweet Caribou, and we were talking about Butcher Block number 9.
Yeah, Butcher Block number 9 is interesting because they had sort of an interesting path to opening a store in South Anchorage.
Yeah, you know, they've been out in the valley for decades with Matt Valley Meats, and they started a farmers market booth at South Anchorage Farmers Market showcasing their products. Saw how much demand there was, particularly there in South Anchorage, and Butcher Block number 9 was born.
And that South Anchorage Farmers Market has been pretty amazing. I know that Bambino's baby food got its start there. So let's kind of roll the clock back and talk about some of the history of Alaska agriculture. I found this photograph, and I just have to share it with you, of some rutabagas that were grown out in the Lake Clark area. This is a National Park Service historical photo, but look at the size of those. I mean, each rutabaga is about the size of a kid's head. You know, and then of course, you know, we have our own Alaska Fair just to see examples of huge veggies out there, ginormous ones, you know, the cabbages, also, you know, big carrots. Is this going to be our limit, our ceiling? Is this what we're always going to be known for, our big veggies?
I certainly hope not. I think there's a lot more to be told about Alaska agriculture than the giant veggies. Of course, if that's what captures people's attention, we'll provide that too, right? But there's so much more to Alaska's agriculture story than just those giant veggies.
Yeah, get them in the door with the giant veggies, and then we can share more stories that we're doing here.
Yeah.
But what does it say? I mean, it's a good starting base that we're known for a great product, right?
Yeah.
But where do we go from this?
There's nothing but potential for Alaska's agriculture industry. I think it's thrown around a lot that 95% of our food is imported, and so to me that's just nothing but potential. There's so much room for more growth, more farmers, more people demanding Alaska grown, and we're one of the lucky states that's seen an increase in farmers as opposed to a decrease. Most states are losing farmers every day, and we're growing in the number of farmers.
And there's so much room for innovation, for us to be on the leading edge of doing something different. We were talking about these businesses that have grown out of the farmers market, and they are taking steps and taking risks that a normal traditional business model wouldn't. If you go straight into a brick and mortar store, that's a very traditional path. But if you start somewhere different, you're willing to take these kind of side paths and risks. And I think they're doing things that are just completely innovative and new and really exciting for us as a state.
Well, also, they get feedback because if a product doesn't go well or it goes gangbusters, they know.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the challenges for growing the agriculture industry. What do you see as some of the biggest obstacles?
You know, access to capital is something that we talk about a lot in the ag industry, and then access to land. And of course, that's what Farmland Trust is focused on, is protecting that farmland that is out there so that the next generation of farmers has somewhere to farm.
Well, for example, we see farmland forever, kind of your slogan there, saving this land. I guess a lot of this could have easily been absorbed into development.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's happening rapidly out in the Matanuska Valley, where the best soils for producing food happen to be out there. And it's also quite good for homes, right? People want to live out there. But we just closed on that Spring Creek farm easement along with Great Land Trust, and those acres will be permanently used for agriculture forever.
So what kind of potential do you have to make sure more land is protected?
Well, we have the great problem of a lot of farmers want to work with us right now. So Farmland Trust is in a good position to raise money and permanently protect more of those acres for future food production.
Well, I want to also show you some footage, too, of a potential farm that is a stone's throw from Anchorage, the old Native Hospital, their site. They're looking at turning that into a garden or farm. What do you think about the urban opportunities for farming?
I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really on the forefront of what this movement needs to be doing and rethinking where and how we can grow our food. Yes, we need the farms out in the valley, but thinking if we can restructure our food system to grow food closer to us, I think it connects us to our food more when we can see it and feel it and taste it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about rural Alaska, because it costs so much. I mean, if you're having to fly all your groceries in, and subsistence, going out and hunting and fishing costs money. You need gas, you need the tools to do that, the snow machines. What's the potential there?
Nothing but potential. Again, I think that Alaskans are so connected to their food system naturally. We all rely on some sort of subsistence, whether it's hunting or fishing, wild harvesting. But there's nothing but potential for more people to grow more food or connect with their neighbors that are growing more food.
Well, a lot of people are sort of critical of this farm-to-table movement. They think of it as an elitist foodie thing, and people maybe almost navel-gazing about where their food comes from. What do you think about that? I mean, maybe somehow they don't feel included in this.
Well, I think that we need to rethink that a little bit. Yes, I see the criticism and I understand it, because I grew up in a small rural community, and bringing in food and local food, it was really expensive and hard to do, but there are so many ways that you can incorporate it into your daily life. If you've gone to the farmer's market in the past and thought it was too expensive, we encourage you to go back, try again. Look at the prices in the grocery store. There are so many farms who are now in cars and in Fred Meyer, where you can buy Alaska grown. There's the $5 Alaska grown food challenge, which I think is such a great way that you don't have to buy all Alaska grown if you can't afford it or don't think that you can afford it. But that $5 a week makes a huge difference in the local economy.
Absolutely.
So do you think really that it's truly affordable? Because people tell me, you know, look, I can't do this. You know, it just, those prices are much higher than...
Well, what's the real cost of that food that's being imported from the lower 48, though? I would argue that the local food is higher in nutrition, the quality is better, it's 2,000 miles fresher. So what you're actually taking into your body when you consume Alaska grown, I would argue has got to be much better for you. And so consider that when you're looking at the costs.
And I would say, too, if you're going to go to the store and you're going to buy lettuce, and that lettuce is less expensive, but it's going to go bad in 2 days, as opposed to a local lettuce that you can eat all week, what's the cost of your food, and how much of that cost that you're actually paying is going straight into your garbage can?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your magazine, Edible Alaska, because it does have a lot of good ideas about how to economize, take advantage of things. What's kind of the basic philosophy of the magazine?
Yeah, it's celebrating local foods season by season. So we're a quarterly magazine, and we have recipes and we have food stories. We tell the stories of farmers and fishermen, and we really try to give a holistic view of the actual food story of Alaska. So many people think that we are just salmon and we're just crab. There's so much more to us, and I think right now is a really interesting time that so many eyes in the lower 48 are on Alaska and on Alaska's food scene.
It's a beautiful magazine. You brought some issues with you. It's nice to spend time with it.
Yeah, it's a great coffee table book. A lot of people want to subscribe and give gift subscriptions to their family in the lower 48. It's a great coffee table book for people in the lower 48.
And how do you subscribe?
You can go to our website, edibleak.com, and you can subscribe there. You can get the gift subscriptions there. And if you are already a subscriber and you want to support our project even more, you can gift a subscription to a rural library so that we can keep spreading these stories of Alaska's food and the food system here.
So one of the things, too, that I want to share with you is here at KTVA, a group of staffers is looking at an all-Alaska food challenge for 1 month, eating as much Alaska food as they can, incorporating it into their diet. And it's going to be up to the employees about how far they want to carry this. But how about some advice from you about how we could pursue a month of eating Alaska only?
Well, I love it. I love that you guys are doing it, and I think more Alaskans should do the same thing. There's so many Alaska-grown products available in the grocery store all year round. So I think, and the grocery stores are highlighting those products better now, so they're easier to find. So Edible Alaska has a great collection of recipes that you can focus on too.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of recipes for you. You can head to our website and find those. You can pick up our magazine. And I think that it's really interesting that we're able to actually do this now, because, I mean, maybe a few years ago, the idea of this challenge would have been a lot harder, but now there's so many options, especially in August and September. It's really kind of the greatest time to be eating local in Alaska. You have so much bounty.
You can go to the farmer's market and capitalize on that.
Well, and if you don't want to cook your own food, there's an incredible amount of restaurants that are highlighting Alaska grown too, and the Division of Agriculture even has a great smartphone app that will show you what restaurants in your area are using Alaska grown products.
You can find that on the Edible Alaska website too.
Sure, you can.
Yeah.
All right, I want to thank both of you for kind of giving us some inspiration here. Well, one of our photojournalists in preparation for KTVA's All Alaska Food Challenge went out berry picking with his family. John Thane's daughter, Ruby, stole the show. So we leave you now with a look at Ruby's Raspberry Roundup. We'll see you next week.
Mom, these are the best ones ever.
You pick some?
Wow, these are so good looking.
Good job.
Wow. So many raspberries. A lot more raspberries. Daddy, I see a golden one, but it's
Yeah, just get the right ones. They should pull off easy.